Yo, what's up, street talk, street gods, street vlogs? Here Kim has, right? Some thoughts. So, just finished doing a workshop with Ha in Hanoi, and so some interesting thoughts for us. So, first and foremost, we typically think of ourselves just as street photographers. I think it's actually much more robust to think of ourselves as visual artists as well. So, I think one of the reasons why I've been enjoying my thought is the most successful photographer is the one who's still continually making new photos. It's often a big tragedy and the sad thing when photographers kind of give up on photography and stop shooting. The most critical goal is to keep shooting. And this is where I think thinking about photography and street photography, everything in between, is kind of a lifestyle thing. Insofar much as it's not like, oh, I have to take X amount of time to go out to the streets and shoot street photography, but rather any and every single opportunity could be an interesting street photography opportunity. And often the question is like, oh, is this a street photograph or not? And one thing that's always important to consider is, can I be using any and every single opportunity to be shooting street photography? So, for example, whenever I'm with Cindy, essentially I use her to practice my composition. And probably the best thing that I did was delete my Instagram.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is the
The reason why it's good,
it
could essentially give you the opportunity
opportunity
to make photos which are visually interesting to you.
We're expecting a flight
Also,
time.
another thing which is here is you kind of
Right, thanks for choosing Bamboo Airways. Hope you have very
don't show people's heads or faces, and as a consequence, it makes the photos more open-ended, which makes it more interesting for the viewers to look at and analyze themselves. And I think probably the number one thing you could do to improve your photography is to travel. When you're traveling, you see more of the world. This is a photo of my mom, and yeah, just at a bus stop in doing a pit stop in Korea, and I kind of like the photo because she has this kind of fun, interesting gesture. She's kind of stretching out her fingers, right? And in the background, you have these guys kind of falling out, right? So it's pretty fun. And another thing which I think is really important and critical is when it comes to photography, capturing the hand gestures is what really makes the photograph much more emotional. So you could do this with your friends, your family, your loved ones, whatever. Capturing the hand gestures will make the photos feel much more intimate. This is a gesture Cindy often does when she's thinking. And also, when in doubt, there's nothing better else to photograph. You could always photograph yourself. Sometimes photographing yourself is the best subject because you know yourself the best. And I'm just kind of interested in images myself as well. Another thing that's important to consider is in photography, street photography. Yeah, I think too much of the bias, the history of photography, street photography has been towards like kind of sad, depressive, emo photos. I think making photos which are fun and happy and familial actually feel much more meaningful. And you could make and see interesting photo opportunities anywhere. So for example, this is a photo I shot in a bookstore in Saigon. And street photography is not just sequestered to one place, but you could shoot anywhere. You could even shoot in the mall. And the reason I like this photo is, I like a beautiful woman and then her being focused on me. And I think it's funny because as a photographer, street photographer, essentially the strategy is to be what I call like a friendly asshole. Is that if you want to make really great photos, there is a certain element of aggression and assholeness which I think is critical to harness. Photosynthesis. And so the question often is, what's better, color or black and white? I think both is great, and I think it just kind of depends on your mood. So I go through periods of time when I'm bored of black and white, then I switch to color, and vice versa. And a pro tip I have is when you're shooting photos, shoot -1, -2, -3 exposure compensation. It's a very effective way to, kind of darken the shadows and then make the faces a little bit more mysterious, which makes better photos. And yeah, with photography, one of the best things you can do is look for shapes and repetition. A photograph that I shot in Japan. Another pro tip too is when you're photographing, a little bit of disk clarity is often a good thing. Is that if you're not 100% sure what you're looking at, it's actually better insofar much as you integrate better visual curiosity to the viewer, and they actually have to use their brain to analyze and actually figure out what's happening.
Nếu quý khách đi cùng trẻ em hoặc cần dè an toàn đường dài, vui lòng liên hệ tiếp viên hàng không để hướng dẫn và trợ giúp.
Another tip is when you're photographing, a very good strategy is to shoot through windows and reflections. And an interesting thing is with faces, getting 3 faces is often a good strategy.
Introduced with the seatbelt or the seatbelt provided by cabin crew. Visual seatbelt fastened and visible to cabin crew.
And so another thing with photography and layers is that the reason I like to shoot layers is that it makes you feel like you're really there. So the upside of shooting with like a wide angle lens, like a 20mm lens, and just getting very close and trying to fill the frame with your subjects. Looking for textures. Also another interesting thing is when I was living abroad with Cindy, stuck in the apartment all day, you can even practice street photography composition while at home. Another tip is when you're photographing kids, trying to get eye contact. So let's say the kids walk in, then all I can say hello, and then just have them look at you. So a very effective strategy that I have is called the blocking technique. You see this space here, just kind of fill yourself with white space to block out all the distracting elements. And probably one of the most interesting or useful things I've learned about photography is when you're looking at photos, to try to create some sort of sense of mystery in the photos and to interpret the photo yourself. So to me, this looks like a girl with a ponytail on her arm, and I will deconstruct it. So first I will fill it with red to show a little bit, and I did some Procreate on my iPad. And then I start painting in the details. White in the background, black in the background. So essentially what you're trying to do as a photographer is gain some sort of sense of visual gist, and in order to improve your photography, becoming more abstract is a good thing. So the infinite curiosity that I have is, what is the limit of photography? How can I always be pushing the limits of photography, and what could be the next level? So the way I've manifested this too is I spent a long time shooting black and white, and also long periods of shooting color, and trying to discover the maximum of the limits of each. And the exciting thing is I feel like I'm just getting started. Another good technique is what I call the decapitation technique. often by not showing the faces of your subjects, you actually make the photos much more surreal and interesting to look at. Reflections are good. Also, the upside using flash. This is Ricoh GR2 with flash. Photographing your muse using your loved ones. And also one of the big upsides of shooting with the flash, especially at night, is you could just open up a whole new realm of photos and photo opportunities. Another pro tip is if you want to make more dynamic photos, tilting the camera a little bit to the left or the right can make the photos feel a little bit more off-kilter, unbalanced, and uneasy, which makes for better photos. Probably some of the most productive time that I've spent is just kind of living abroad. And also another pro tip I have is when you're analyzing your photos, import them. A thing that you could do to better look at the details is you just invert the photos. And by inverting the photos, you could see a lot more of the interesting details, like for example, this tree. Or using gradient map, which I often like to do. I like this noir filter. I like red because it's the color of blood. And this is a great chance for me to kind of double dip where I'm both creating art, right? And I'm also remixing my photos. So I think remixing is a very effective strategy to make art that you find beautiful. And actually that's the thing that we should never forget is our goal, what we're trying to do is we're not just trying to make photos, but we're trying to make art, visual art. So the idea of calling yourself a visual artist is, I believe, a very interesting and effective strategy. And the question you always got to ask yourself is, looking at your photos, does looking at your own photos bring you joy? Does it bring back good memories? And if the photos do, then they are good photos. An interesting thing with photography is that photos often repeat themselves. So this is a photo by the photographer Sergio Loran. I believe this is in Spain, maybe. And this is a photo I shot as cross-referencing in New York City. And so I think actually to be a great photographer, stealing is a good thing. To blatantly copy people is good because even if you try to copy it 100%, it'll never be the same. And this is a type of photo that I personally really like because it makes me feel like I'm Piat Mondrian. I like the tiny little color here and the gate in the background. Blur is also good, so almost all my blurry photos that I've shot were almost all precisely on accident. And just because you shoot it on accident doesn't mean it's bad. I think I call it beautiful mistakes. With beautiful mistakes, you harness a little bit of the unpredictability to make a beautiful image. And another pro tip, when you're photographing, right? So if you want to improve your composition, really check the corners and edges. If the corners and edges of your photos are clean and precise, they'll make for good photos. And also another pro tip is when you look at a photo of Sen, the finger acts like an arrow which leads your eyes through the frame. And also another thing that's important with composition, I like to screenshot and then just draw the lines I see. And the more curves you can get, the better. Looking for grit and grain texture. So another pro tip I do is I do this on Procreate on the iPad. Invert the image to better see the details. Then add some sort of color gradient. And you could keep remixing or upcycling the image to create different types of images to figure out why the photo is interesting. So that's ultimate curiosity you gotta think and consider when you're doing your photos is why do your own photos interest you, and try to find something interesting.
chung là không quan tâm nên con cũng không nói là con về làm cái gì con.
So what I personally saw here when I was photographing it, I saw the circles.
Không có nói là làm như nào. Tại đâu quan tâm đâu mà nói là nói là. Bây giờ phải cố gắng để kiếm đứa con được không? Rồi kiếm đứa con bây giờ mới nói
Essentially
chuyện
what I
được.
want to teach
Muốn
you
làm gì
is
cũng được. Sau này nó rõ ràng con không thích phức tạp.
see more abstractly,
Nhà bé con đi chỗ khác con hỏi
to see more like
không ai hỏi không ai quan tâm.
and yeah, and I think the real beauty of photography, street photography, especially with my personal evolution, is trying to see things more abstractly. So this is just a drain, right? But to me, I can kind of see like an angel or wings here. And once again, the reason I love black and white is that it kind of makes the world more mysterious and interesting. So I outlined this with Procreate, just filled it in. So ultimately, this is kind of the visual gist of the image that I see. So whenever you're reviewing your photos, you're looking through your photos and you're choosing them, the thing you always want to ask yourself is like, why is it that I like this photo, and what is it about this individual photo which interests me? And the more you can analyze your own photos, I find this to be a very effective strategy. Even this, I'm looking, why do I like it? So I'm trying to analyze it, so I invert it. Like, oh, I could better see the irregularities between the colors and the dark spots. Add a gradient to it. I kind of like this photo I shot recently. It's like a man working at the electricity pole. To me, it's like a metaphor of like a man stuck in the machine. So by inverting the photo, you could better see the outline of the man and all these other details here. And so the reason I love photography is that it kind of gives you some sort of a photo vision, and as a consequence, you can see the world more vividly and interestingly. With the crimson red filter applied. Another tip is when it's raining, I'm just in a grab taxi in an Uber going home. I'm shooting outside the window, shot like 500 pictures. And yeah, and I just kind of ended up liking the fact that the rain had here. And so a lot of the photos you make, it doesn't really need to say anything, but if it has a certain mood that you like, then it's a good photo. And the great thing I think with street photography is that you could essentially apply it however you want, and also photographing your kids. Having a kid is probably the best thing you do as a photographer. And once again, looking for the little hand gestures, the repetitions of forms are effective like here. So, how do you know if your photos are good? Typically, every
Cabin crew, sit for takeoff.
I will review my old photos and just think to myself. So, for example, a lot of these photos are from 2017, right? Almost like 6 years ago, right? So, if you look at your photos from 6 years ago and you still like the photos, they're probably good photos. An important thing is having a little bit of negative space in between here is quite critical to prevent overlap. And also on the upside, this is with the GR2 during the day, using a flash during the day. You can see the flash, it creates this little, it actually lit up all the flowers quite beautifully. And this is quite critical to know because this effect would otherwise be impossible if done on Photoshop or whatever. You had to use the flash to make this effect. Sometimes also one of the good things is if you're lazy. So this lady just opened the door to go to the restroom and took a picture. And so just always having your camera with you and always being ready to shoot whenever is quite wise. So people often ask me what's the best technical settings for street photography. very simple P program mode, auto ISO, center, normal autofocus, human tracking, whatever. Um, and I shoot small JPEG, in camera JPEG, the dynamic black and white high green contrast, and if you could shoot 2,000 photos a day, I think this is a good practice. When we went to Sapa, when I went with Ha, water buffalo. And yeah, and, sometimes what you could do is you could just look up. And probably one of the big benefits of using Flash is you could create new surreal type of images, which otherwise wouldn't be possible without Flash. Or if you want to shoot street photography with a flash, slower shutter speed, this is 1/15th of a second to create some sort of dramatic blur. Also, if you're in the background and you see like advertisements with eyes, just wait for somebody to enter the frame, and you could create also a dynamic juxtaposition here. So I started street photography when I was like 21. I'm 35 right now, born in '88. So I'm like at least 14 years in the game and I'm still going. And probably the best advice I have is, irregardless of everything, you gotta keep going. You can't stop, won't stop, don't stop. It's because just when I thought that I discovered the final limit of photography, I discovered there's still so much more new to discover. So this is shooting flash street photography with film, portrait 400. One of the benefits of using flash here is that you get the eye there. You have the movement foreground. Nice little curve composition with Cindy. Okay, so this is actually a big question. If you're going to shoot a street portrait, try to get one eye in the center frame. By photographing an eye close to the center of the frame, you create more dynamism. Another pro tip, photographing other people or your loved ones or somebody through the bottom of the glass cup. Or just pit stop at the gas station. And I think the really important thing in photography is to just essentially share your life journey. So the feeling I want people to get when they're looking at my photos is that they're just part of my life journey. And the more personal you can make your photos, the better. And one of the tips I have about color photography. So if you want to create more vibrant, saturated, vivacious, juicy photos, shoot with flash. Once again, shooting a photo like this is Cindy. Note the little negative space in between, which makes it a good photo. Portrait Cindy shot me in Hanoi. So another pro tip is when you're shooting these kind of photos, if you have a subject really close to you at the center of the frame, and then you put your focus in the background, like photograph to infinity and beyond, you could add more depth to the photo. Another pro tip is in terms of your subjects, right? Have them look up towards the eyes so you get better catch lights in the eyes, and also you have all the details in the lights. Another thing with leading lines, just get your subject in the center. Not just photographers, but other types of artists. So, for example, I love abstract artists like Piet Mondrian, etc. And, like, for example, a simple way you can do this, you could screenshot the image, you can incorporate. So the future. Yeah, Vietnam, Asia, Southeast Asia, Korea connection. It's going to be kind of the future. So if you want to make more dynamic photos and street photos, photographing in the region seems like a good idea. I think especially Vietnam is quite well positioned because Vietnam is going through a current period of rapid industrialization, and I think there will be a lot more future manufacturing done here as well. A really important thing you gotta ask yourself is ultimately do you care for looking at your
Cái an toàn trong suốt hành trình bay, không khi máy bay vào khu vực thời tiết
a
nước
lot
đông.
of people they
Thiết
take
bị điện tử
photos
có thể sử dụng ở chế độ máy bay.
Are you just
Thời
shooting
điểm
this
này,
because you
người
just
điều
want to
khiển máy bay
upload
đã
to
được trang bị
Facebook
áo
or
cánh.
Instagram or social
Biết
media
lập một áo phao
or
rất
do you actually do it
vì không
because
có yêu
you're
cầu tiếp
interested
viên
in
hàng không.
yourself?
Việc lưu ý
So a quick tip I
máy
have
bay,
is
các trang thiết bị an toàn
just
là
screenshot
hành
your
vi
own
vi phạm quy
details
định an toàn và sẽ được xử lý theo quy định. Biết buộc lòng điện giác và thủ giấy và chuyển cho tiếp viên hàng không theo dõi.
So
Trong
what
khoang
I have
một
discovered
phòng
for
vệ sinh
myself
ở phía
is
trước
I'm
dành cho
addicted
khoang
to
thương gia
images.
và các phòng vệ sinh ở phía sau dành cho khoang phổ thông. Bamboo Airways mong muốn mang đến cho khách hàng trải nghiệm hơn cả một
curious
chuyến
about
bay.
it
Nếu quý
and how
khách
they
chưa chọn
manifest.
muốn làm lễ với tiếp viên hàng
And every
không,
time I see
xin
something
chọn cảm
interests
ơn.
me, I just
Please
screenshot.
join in a smoking flight. Please refrain from smoking, including a cigarette. Please keep seatbelt fastened and be cautious in case of unexpected turbulence. Laptop computer
So I think
devices
for me,
in flight mode
ultimately,
may
I'm
be used
just
on or
visual
under
shapes
descent for landing. Do not remove the verification without
That's
cabin
what
crew
keeps
consent.
driving.
Removing safety equipment after the aircraft in violation of the law and will be according with the law aviation authority. Please be aware this demand
So I
and the cabin crew population. Thank you.
What is happiness? So I think I found the secret of happiness is very simple. Walking is happiness. To become happier, walk more. And this will also benefit you greatly as a photographer because whatever. The more you walk, the more photo opportunities you'll see. The more you'll shoot, the happier you'll be. And also, I mean, towards kind of a full stack creative lifestyle. Is if your partner, your wife, your girlfriend, boyfriend, whoever is creative, like for me and Cindy, your kid is creative, your family's creative, your whole family's gonna be creative, and then everyone will succeed together. So my big suggestion is with creativity, arts, everything in between, integrate your whole family into it. So creative lifestyle. I think this is kind of an interesting idea because essentially what you want to do is you want to design your life to maximize your own creativity and output. So simple things like you do is traveling. I love clothes like this because even like traveling, staying at friends' Airbnbs, whatever. Because anytime you push yourself outside your comfort zone and not according to what you typically do, you'll just end up seeing more, experiencing more, and becoming more. Flying, I think, is a good strategy.
Kính thưa quý khách, và hiện tại là đi vào vùng thời tiết bị nhiễu động. Vì lý do an toàn, tôi muốn làm trở về chỗ ngồi, hãy an toàn và lưu ý một số phòng vệ sinh trong thời gian này cho các nơi sẵn sàng quý khách. This travel due to air turbulence, please return to your seat, fasten your seatbelt. Please use the laundry this time. Thank you.
So just click the image, click invert. So by inverting the photo, you can better see these interesting images. And as long as you're making images that you're passionate about, consider yourself a host. Flying is probably insanely beneficial, like even putting together this presentation, if you don't know already, I'm doing flying. Something about flying which is quite good for you creatively, photographically, etc. is that, like, for example, when I'm on a plane in Wi-Fi mode, or an airplane mode, I think I can think a little bit better, so just fly somewhere. And yeah, ultimately, one of my creative partners uses I owe infinite gratitude to Cindy. The most beautiful woman in the world. And it's catching and even objective. And it's kind of cool too because any opportunity could be a street photography opportunity with Cindy. So I think to have a lifestyle which supports or is for fashion, photography, everything in between is quite good. Even something that I'm getting into is creating my own clothing and fashion linens, or BK clothing income. And yeah, so let's not forget photography. Beauty is everywhere. So capture and photograph what you consider beautiful and let yourself dictate your own aesthetics. And it's so great too because even in photography, Seneca's passion is to be out and about. The more time you spend out and about in elements, no matter how boring you are, the better your life will be. Right? So as a quick recap, when it comes to thinking about all this, very effective to think of yourself not just like a street photographer, but also a visual artist. Harness any and every single opportunity to make photos. And ultimately, I would say just let your own personal curiosity of your own self, your own photos, your life journey push you. Always be motivated by the limits of photography. Stay hungry, stay foolish. Think about the Jay-Z line, never satisfied, can't knock out the soul. So, assuming we're going to be traveling